Are you lost too, mister? The question slipped into the air like a small hand reaching out in a silent room. The lonely CEO, Daniel, blinked and looked down, startled to find a little girl standing beside him. She couldn't have been more than 6. Her pink suitcase was almost twice her size, her shoelaces mismatched, and her curls so wild it looked like she had run through a windstorm just to reach him. He hadn't heard her approach. He hadn't heard anything for the last 10 minutes. He had been standing in front of the departure board, staring at the glowing list of cities without reading a single one. His life was full of destinations, but none of them had felt like a place lately. Yet somehow, this small voice had cut straight through the fog around him. I'm not lost, he answered automatically. The girl narrowed her eyes with innocent suspicion. You look lost. He exhaled a small, helpless breath. Do I? She nodded seriously. Yes. You look like people look when they don't know where their heart is supposed to go. The sentence hit him harder than he expected. Where's your mom? He asked, trying to shift the attention away from himself. She pointed somewhere toward the thick crowd of rushing travelers. She's finding our gate. She said the airport changed it again because airplanes get confused sometimes. He almost smiled. Airplanes don't get confused. Then grown-ups do, she replied simply. A strange warmth stirred in his chest, too gentle, too unexpected. He hadn't felt anything soften inside him in a long time. Not since he had begun living more in hotel rooms than in his own home. Not since he started measuring his days in flight durations and his nights in missed calls. The little girl tugged lightly on his sleeve. I'm Ella, she said with a bright, matter-of-fact tone. You look like a Mr. Daniel. He stared. How did you? It's just a feeling, she said proudly. He hadn't spoken his name to anyone today, yet somehow she said it like she already knew him. Well, I am Daniel, he admitted. Ella beamed as if she had solved a puzzle. See? Feelings are smart. Daniel suddenly realized he was doing something he hadn't done in too long, listening without rushing. Ella plopped down beside him on the bench as if it were the most natural thing. Her little suitcase bumped into his knee and stayed leaning against him like it had claimed him too. You waiting for someone? She asked. No, he said. I'm just traveling alone. That sounds lonely. She didn't say it unkindly, just softly, like she was naming something she saw. Daniel didn't usually explain himself to anyone, but there was something about her that invited honesty. It is, he said quietly. Ella nodded knowingly. Mommy says people can be lost even when they're standing in the right place. He looked at her, surprised. Your mom said that? Yes. She says being lost is in here. Ella touched the center of her small chest with her tiny palm. Not out there. Daniel followed her gesture instinctively. Something inside him felt too empty, too quiet, too unexplained. Maybe he was lost. Not in the airport, but somewhere deeper. Ella suddenly stood and tugged his arm. Come with me. I need help finding gate C19. Mommy said to follow the signs, but they talk too fast. He rose without thinking, realizing only after a step that he had agreed. All right. Let's find it together. She looked relieved, and proud of him at the same time. Good. Grown-ups walk faster, so you can make the airport slow down for me. Her hand slipped into his naturally, like she trusted him without needing to understand why. Daniel had shaken thousands of hands in his life, but none had felt as grounding as the small, warm fingers holding his now. They walked through the busy terminal. Ella's steps were tiny, so Daniel slowed without being asked. Each time someone rushed past them, she scooted closer, gripping his hand tighter. You're really tall, she said. And you're really small, he replied. She giggled. Mommy says small people can still have big hearts. Daniel glanced at her. I believe that. Ella skipped for a moment, then looked up at him with a sudden seriousness. You smile with your mouth, but not with your eyes. Did you know that? He hesitated. No, I didn't. It means your eyes are tired. He wasn't sure how she saw so much, but he didn't stop her. They reached gate C19 sooner than he expected. A bright sign hung above a row of seats. That's it. Ella announced proudly. Then she didn't let go of his hand right away. See, she said. You weren't lost. You just needed someone to walk with. Before Daniel could reply, a woman came rushing toward them, breathless, hair slightly messy, eyes filled with both anxiety and relief. There you are, she exclaimed, dropping to her knees and hugging Ella tight. Then she turned to Daniel, gratitude soft in her voice. Thank you. She tends to wander toward people she likes. I'm so sorry if she bothered you. Daniel shook his head. She didn't bother me. Ella tugged his sleeve again before letting go. Mommy, this is Mr. Daniel. He was lost too. Her mother flushed slightly but smiled. Kids say what their hearts see. Daniel nodded. She's very observant. Ella leaned close to him. You should come with us, she whispered. You look like someone who needs somewhere warm to go. He opened his mouth to answer, but no sound came out. Something about her gentle certainty felt like an invisible hand touching a bruise he had ignored for too long. Ella hugged his leg briefly, then grabbed her mother's hand. As she walked toward the boarding line, she looked back at him twice, each time with a smile too big for a girl her size. Daniel watched her, a strange ache blooming in his chest. A quiet ache. A hopeful one. For the first time in months, he realized he didn't want to keep standing still. Not in this airport, not in his life. Ella had asked him if he was lost. And now, watching her tiny hand clutch her mother's, he wondered. Maybe he finally wanted to be found again. Ethan didn't know how long he stood there, staring at the boarding gates, holding the tiny pink hair clip in his hand like it carried the weight of 1,000 stories. Travelers rushed past him, families greeting, friends reuniting, people hurrying, but he felt oddly still, as if the world had slowed down just long enough to let him understand something he hadn't admitted in years. He hadn't been lost in the way the little girl meant, but for the first time he realized he was tired of wandering emotionally, tired of airports, tired of hotels, tired of moving without arriving anywhere that felt like home. And somehow, a 5-year-old simple question had shaken something loose inside him. He walked slowly toward the lounge area where he'd last seen Mia and her grandmother, feeling a quiet hope he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't sure why he wanted to see them again. He only knew that he did. He found them sitting by the window, the older woman carefully tightening MIA's pink backpack straps as they waited for their delayed flight. MIA's feet swung above the floor, humming a tune he didn't recognize, her tiny shoes tapping the chair legs lightly. She turned the moment she sensed him nearby, her eyes lighting up in a bright, innocent way that made his chest tighten. You came back, she whispered, as if she wasn't sure grown-ups ever returned once they walked away. Ethan smiled softly and crouched down to her height. I forgot something important, he said, opening his palm to reveal her clip. Mia gasped, both hands flying to her head. My butterfly. I thought she flew away forever. She did, Ethan said gently. But she found her way back to you. Mia beamed as he helped clip it into her soft brown hair, her head tilting forward so he could reach. When he secured it, she patted it proudly. Now I'm not lost, she declared. Now my butterfly knows where I am. Her grandmother smiled gratefully. Thank you, she said. She was so upset when she realized it was missing. It was nothing, Ethan replied, but it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like the most meaningful interaction he'd had all week. He noticed the older woman looked tired, her coat neatly buttoned but worn around the sleeves, her hand steady but showing the kind of careful control people develop when life doesn't give them much margin for mistakes. She held their boarding passes tucked neatly in a plastic sleeve, double-checked, and creased in the places that showed she handled everything with care. You're traveling far? Ethan asked politely. Home, she said with a soft exhale. We were visiting my daughter for the holidays. It's just us now, so I wanted Mia to have at least one familiar place this year. Mia leaned against her grandmother's shoulder, nibbling on the edge of a biscuit she'd been saving. She looked up at Ethan again, studying him with curious concentration. Are you going home too? She asked. The question struck deeper than she could understand. Home. What even counted as home for a man who lived out of suitcases and carried his life in conference schedules? He shook his head slightly. Not exactly. I'm heading to a meeting. Another city. Another hotel. Mia scrunched her face, like she was genuinely trying to solve a puzzle. Don't you get lonely? Ethan hesitated. There were many answers he could have given, polite ones, vague ones, but when he looked into her small, honest eyes, he found himself answering in a way he never did with adults. Sometimes, he admitted quietly. Mia slid off her seat, walked right up to him, and held out half a biscuit, even though she only had one. You can have this, she said, voice unwavering. Mommy used to say sharing makes people feel less alone. The kindness hit him unexpectedly hard. Her grandmother looked like she might apologize, but Ethan shook his head, touched in a way he couldn't hide. Thank you, he said. That's a very special gift. Mia nodded, proud. Then you're not lonely now. Something warm loosened in his chest. Maybe she was right. Maybe loneliness wasn't about the number of people around him. It was about the absence of small, human moments like this. Would you like to sit with us until your flight? Her grandmother asked gently. You're welcome to. You've been very kind. Ethan glanced at his watch. His own flight wasn't boarding for another hour. For once, his schedule didn't matter. The sterile lounges and business emails could wait. I'd like that, he said. He sat beside them, and the next few minutes unfolded with a gentle simplicity he hadn't experienced in years. Mia insisted on showing him the drawings she'd made in her tiny travel notebook. Messy stars, uneven houses, a stick figure version of herself holding hands with someone she described as Mommy before she went to the sky. He listened quietly, letting the soft weight of her trust settle on him with a kind of reverence. Her grandmother sipped warm tea from a paper cup and shared small details about their lives. Not burdens, just real moments. Ethan found himself wanting to listen, wanting to understand, wanting to be present in a way he rarely allowed himself to be. Every few minutes, Mia would check that he was still there, nudging his sleeve or handing him another crayon or showing him another page. And each time he responded, her smile grew a little wider, as though she was filing the memory somewhere safe. When the boarding announcement finally came, MIA's face fell just slightly. You're not coming with us. Ethan shook his head gently. I'll be going somewhere else. She stepped closer and wrapped her small arms around his waist in a soft, sudden hug. You're not lost now, she murmured. Because now someone knows you. His throat tightened. Her grandmother helped her with her bag, then turned to Ethan. Thank you for giving her such a kind moment. She doesn't open up to many people. Thank you, he said sincerely, for letting me stay. Mia waved as they walked toward the gate, her small butterfly clip glinting beneath the bright airport lights. Ethan stayed where he was, watching them until they disappeared into the crowd. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a man wandering through airports. He felt like a man carrying something new, an unfamiliar warmth, a lingering connection, and a quiet realization that maybe he wasn't as alone as he'd always assumed. He glanced down at the half biscuit still in his hand, smiled to himself, and whispered softly into the busy terminal air. I'm not lost anymore.